I was watching a person drown just before my eyes. He's looking at me like, help me. I have to get there, I have to get there, I cannot fail. I joined the Coast Guard 10 years ago. It's been an incredible experience ever since. One of my favorite things is just going out and being able to help people. It's just something I've seen my dad do his entire military career, which is something that I model after. And it doesn't matter if I'm in uniform or not. Nice, beautiful day, steady breeze. Just a normal, Sunday afternoon, just hanging out at the beach.
I was sitting at the beach and I looked out into the ocean and I saw 3 men that were struggling to stay afloat.
One of them started to drown. He started to go underwater. I just, without even a thought, just ran down to the water. I, grabbed a boogie board, and then I just started making my way out to them. The guy that was barely holding himself up above water, I grabbed him first really quick and pulled him towards me onto the boogie board.
I was shaking. I had tears in my eyes.
My biggest thing was I cannot fail. I cannot fail. I got to get this guy back to the beach safely. It was a relief, to watch them reunite with their families and the kids and, their significant others. I mean, that was a huge relief for me, just like, okay, they're okay. And, now they get to go home.
I feel like had she have not been there, that somebody could have lost a father, a brother, an uncle. So it was really nice to see that, that moment when the family gathered and they were all hugging. It made me extremely proud of her because she's such a selfless human being.
I think that anyone in the Coast Guard would have reacted the same way that I did to go out and help somebody. That's just what we do in our service.
I was laying in my bunk and I felt the whole boat shake 4 levels up.
This was something beyond what I could fathom.
60-knot winds, 30-foot seas.
I knew it was going to take everything that Canada and the United States Coast Guard had.
ARC Search and Rescue Bonjour. We were alerted through our Coast Guard radio station that a vessel was on fire. Due to the weather and the circumstances behind their distress, we reached out to our SAR partners, including the U.S. Coast Guard.
They said it was taking on water approximately 200 miles or more off of Cape Cod. So we launched to go 200 miles offshore into the dark to assist.
When you look down at the vessel in distress, the Atlantic Destiny, it was just out of control. It was just at the mercy of the wind and the waves.
It's not every day you get to see a large vessel like that being battered by a significant sea state. You could see it in their faces. They were starting to be concerned. Some of the older guys, they've been around, they know how many vessels get lost out here, and they've been around the block.
I kept thinking that I wanted to get home. And knowing that there was people being lifted and going home gave me hope that I would join them as well.
We were still trying to rescue people, and then my helicopter ended up having a major malfunction. I had to make the choice to leave my own crew members on that vessel and leave with who I had on board and try and make it back to shore.
Helicopter's gone, nothing I can do about that. This rescue still needs to happen, and I could see the Jayhawks starting to come in.
And we have to now divide and conquer with both 60s.
We moved in position. We jettisoned our mass rescue operations raft and deployed our pump to the vessel in order to make room for all the survivors.
I could hear over all the noise and through my headset, all the guys in the back just cheering, like as I'm pulling another person in. Hearing that, like, okay, we can get one more. We can get one more. So that's what we did.
We are honored to be with you today to talk about some extraordinary Coast Guard men and women that did extraordinary things.
It was teamwork at its finest. I mean, by every agency involved. Something went wrong at every step, and it was rectified, and we just kept going to the point where everyone made it back to shore.
Everybody took their job seriously and made sure that we were all going to get home safe.
It makes everything worth it being able to see a family reunited after a case like that.
We had never responded to something like this before. We knew we would have to take risks because people's lives were on the line and they were depending on what we would do next. We had begun the year hearing of this pandemic that was occurring in the Far East.
COVID-19 continues to spread worldwide. Life on lockdown. If they find sort of one person who tests positive, suddenly these cruise ships need a place to go.
In the midst of this uncertainty, that's when I got the call.
We were just notified that the Grand Princess has possible cases of COVID-19.
As soon as she said it, you're trained. It's like, okay, this is go time. Medical supplies were delivered, but it wasn't enough. And we knew that as we were getting reports of medical distress for passengers on board, that we were going to have to launch our Ready Cutter, the Coast Guard Cutter Turn, to effect the medical evacuation. We knew that this was the beginning, as there are other cruise ship ports around the United States, especially the port of Miami.
So far, every port in the ship's path has shut down, refusing to let the Zaandam dock.
It seemed as though every ship that came in, and there were about 125 of them, had different challenges, had different levels of COVID-like illness or COVID-positive patients on board. Our plan really was to communicate openly with one another as partners, to leverage each of our authorities so that when the cruise ships came in, we could get them home safely.
Turn was able to medevac 4 personnel from the Grand Princess and also transfer several doctors and medical supplies to the Grand Princess. It felt good to be at the center of that, flying that flag, coming back into the bay, knowing that everyone was watching, knowing that we were able to help all these people.
As a unified command, it was determined that the Port of Oakland had the space, had the security that would be able to carry out the safe disembarkation of the passengers.
I spent an awful lot of time in government, and I struggled to find another agency who could, as well as we did as a Coast Guard, engage our partners in our community and really help curate the emotion of the moment to help our community, our Coast Guard, and our nation through this crisis. I couldn't be prouder of the work we've all done together.
As Coast Guardsmen, we take immense pride in serving the public. We're always ready. We're ready to put everything on the line so we may save that one life. We train all year long for that one call.
Mayday, mayday, mayday. This is Fishing Vessel Legend. Fishing Vessel Legend. Mayday, mayday, mayday.
We got a mayday call from the Fishing Vessel Legend. They had hit the jetties and were taking on water. And so our game plan was to get airborne and find out where this guy was at.
We launched from Air Facility Newport, and almost immediately after takeoff hit turbulence and extremely low visibility. At that point in time, the weather wasn't worth putting my crew in a position to get to the survivor to hoist, so we returned to base.
The first surf boat went out and entered the surf zone. They couldn't get close enough to the mariner, who is now strapped to the top of the pilot house.
So we had no aircraft availability to get to him. The surf boat wasn't going to be able to get to him. And that limited our response pretty much from the beach.
I put BM1 Qual in charge of the beach rescue, and we'd have him drive out to the beach to figure out where this boat was and also see if we can get our guys out to get him off before the surf engulfed the boat and we lost the fisherman.
Where he was a pretty far distance from shore, and due to the environment and the size of the breaking waves, didn't have a high level of confidence that I wanted to get into the water right at that point.
You know, the boat started breaking apart to the point where the master felt he had to go now.
I needed to do something, so at that point we made the call that I was going to get in the water. I could really feel that the current was pretty strong, that it was going to be pretty challenging to try and swim to where he was at. So I just put my head down and swam as hard as I could. Once I got a hold of him, then we were able to communicate with the crew by giving line commands, and then they immediately started to haul us back in.
That night exemplifies what it means to be a Coast Guardsman.
I think it's the missions just like these that motivate us to stay ready for the next call.
As a rescue swimmer, you train like crazy because you need to be ready when you get the call.
I think we got 3 or 4 people severely injured. I don't know how they'd get on board. I think they're going to need a helo crew.
The moment that we got the call for the Golden Ray, I was actually on duty. We heard that 25 people were in the water, and that was pretty much the only information that we had. When you're getting your gear on and getting ready, the things that are going through your mind, you're just trying to play out every scenario you can based on the information that you have, just to try to prepare yourself for what you might come upon. Getting on scene, we saw the container ship pretty much flipped over on its side. The other helicopter told us that there were still people on the bridge wing. We talked as a crew and decided that they would put me down onto the ship. And I actually used the fire hose like a rope and pretty much rappelled down the fire hose into the bridge so that I could make contact with the captain and the harbor pilot.
He was able to sift through the chaos of the scene and prioritize and execute his mission.
I retrieved the fire hose and swung an end over to him. Because he was wearing a life jacket, I thought, okay, just slide down the hose to the very bottom, and then he could climb out through the opposite door down to the water where there were small boats waiting. And so that's what he ended up doing. I ended up tying loops in the hose about an arm's length apart on each one from the point where the captain was up to my position, and told him to climb it. And once he was close to me, grabbed him and pulled him out.
If they were not there, then I may not be here to provide for my family and serve the state of Georgia. I'm just immensely grateful.
Certainly one of the standouts that night was AST2 Nate Newberg. He absolutely embodies the core values of the Coast Guard, and his character and performance were on display on that night. He certainly is a hero.